Good morning, viewers. Thank you very much. It is 3 minutes past 11 o'clock East African Standard Time, and it is indeed 3 minutes past 10 o'clock in Zimbabwe. At the same time, it is also 3 minutes past 10 o'clock in Rwanda, Kigali. These are the two center points that this week we shall be seeing and talking about from time to time. Over 35 heads of state from the Commonwealth will be attending the summit, the Commonwealth Summit to be held in Rwanda, the capital city of Kigali, the capital city of Rwanda. Viewers across the continent of Africa and the world watching, this Commonwealth comes to Africa after the COVID-19. It should have been held in 2020, and then 2021 it could not be held. It was pushed until 2022, today, June. This morning, the forums of the Commonwealth, most of us were invited. Some of us have not been able to attend. But the question that is on the top of everything, on everybody's mind, is one thing: what can the Commonwealth bring to the new after COVID Africa, the economies of Africa? What is it that we can learn from what took place under COVID-19? What is it that we can say we can get? There are countries. Over 20 years ago, the British Commonwealth, Australia, New Zealand, Canada expelled Zimbabwe from the Commonwealth. Today, as we speak, Zimbabwe Foreign Ministry and the Zimbabwe Minister of Foreign Affairs and His Excellency President Mnangagwa have been trying and saying and asking that we need to go back to the Commonwealth. The trigger of expulsion of Zimbabwe from the Commonwealth triggered sanctions. It is Britain that triggered the sanctions that came to bite Zimbabwe after the expulsion. I remember very well Miriam and the other viewers who are watching us, and if you want to join us in this debate, you can actually enter our Zoom, and this is the number of Zoom you can enter. It is on our flyer, 3999 535 8320. Then it will ask you the passcode. The passcode is 503 and 670. You will enter this discussion and you are welcome to make your views whether Zimbabwe, what can Zimbabwe gain by rejoining the Commonwealth? If you are against it, you can also say you don't want Zimbabwe to rejoin the Commonwealth. I am not forcing anybody to say, but this is a debate, and already the Herald of Kenya, of Zimbabwe has already talked about it and saying there are chances of Zimbabwe. Most of us who have been saying Zimbabwe needs to be readmitted in the Commonwealth during the Mugabe government. Most of us told the British, I told Tony Blair myself, in 1998, I stood up in the Labour Delegates Conference and said it was better to engage Mugabe than isolating Mugabe. I have no regrets for having stood by Zimbabwe. Those malcontents, those who have actually belittled Zimbabwe, besmirched Zimbabwe, called for sanctions to kill Zimbabwe, including the leaders of opposition, Morgan Changarai the late, Welshman Kube, and Tendai Biti, and now added with another malcontent called Chamisa. They have belittled, they have besmirched their country, they have prostituted their country. I have been in opposition for 37 years. And my president, President Museveni, has just arrived in Nairobi where we are. But I have never called for sanctions to kill my people. I've been fighting, I've been critically, I'm one of the chief critics of President Museveni, and I have never hidden my desire of stating what is right, what he has done right, I've said he has done right. What he has done wrong, I've said he has done wrong. I have also equally been in the bush. I just don't talk. I've also been a fighter. And I don't talk like a civilian all the time, no. I know what it pains to have a conflict. Therefore, it was the beginning of the trouble that we saw. Zimbabwe fell into the hands, America followed, European Union followed after sanctions were put on this country. From that time to date, as a question of the land redistribution program, viewers and those listening to this tape, and those who will pick this tape, millions of you, I want to tell you the one thing that historically Mugabe did right, which will never reverse, whether you go to Angel Gabriel and come back, whether you want to wash your hands near God and come back, is the reversal of the land redistribution program. The land redistribution program, viewers, ladies and gentlemen, Professor P.L.O. Lumumba and others who are on them watching and listening carefully. The land redistribution program healed a lot. We might have suffered. In 1998, 97, 98, when the war veterans decided that enough is enough, land was redistributed. The whites who wanted to remain in Zimbabwe are still there. Those who wanted to choose to go somewhere because they had second homes, they went. Those who had grievances have been compensated. President E.D. Mnangagwa, my good friend, he has tried to, please these guys by saying, come, we can, okay, if it was the money, we shall pay you, but remove the sanctions. But the biggest headache on this question of sanctions, of which will be one of the key topics that the leaders will discuss in Kigali. What are the benefits if Zimbabwe is still on sanctions? Why can't we speak with one voice, 54 nations? Stand up and say, especially the African countries and the Caribbean countries, and say enough is enough to America. Sanctions must be removed for this country to be able to sell its diamonds, for this country to be able to sell its gold. It is not that Zimbabwe is poor. It is because it has been hit with sanctions that it cannot sell even their own resources, God-given resources. They have an embargo put on Zimbabwe minerals to be exported and sold in the transparent market. It is sad, therefore. For me, this marks my 22nd year since I started struggling for this great nation called Zimbabwe. For me, it marks a great milestone for this great nation, Zimbabwe, that I moved in. I came, I saw, and said, I preferred to defend a black man in Europe than die while begging. I was a victim of attacks. I was a victim of ultra-nationalist attacks in Britain. I was published on headline newspapers. The Telegraph is read by over 80 million. When I walked out of my house, I found a battery of journalists, about 100 of them waiting for me, saying Mugabe's mouthpiece, is in our country. I never gave up. I never told a lie. I never changed my course. I never asked for money. I have never asked for a penny from Mugabe or Emerson Mnangagwa to defend Zimbabwe. I've never gone there to say, beg you, give me some money. If there is any evidence of that money, then that person must be eating the money in my name. I have never. But because of the friendship, the Pan-Africanism, the zeal of patriotism, the zeal to be proud to defend a nation, I fought Shanghai physically in Brussels. I fought Shanghai physically with Watchman Kube in conferences where Zimbabwe ambassador called Simbarashe Mbebegwe could not go. I could go. Where Damba could not go. Where most of these intelligence officers from Zimbabwe attached to European capitals could not go. I went. I attended those conferences. Unfortunately, we have also bad elements within our systems. Elements like Jonathan Moyo, who became a very dangerous man by directing his attacks on innocent people, by even trying to confuse President Mugabe. My policy was leave the journalists. One of the problems that I disagreed with Jonathan Moyo is on the question of journalists. Ladies and gentlemen, Miriam, P.L.O. Lumumba, and the rest of you listening to me, Douglas and others, and Professor Hoyle, who is going to join us shortly. I want to tell you and state categorically that it is this policy of me saying allow the journalists to report. They will report nothing after 1 month. They will be dry. But if you keep them off, they will find the stories to blacklist, to blackmail Zimbabwe. The land program had already been done. There was no reverse. Even Shanghai could not reverse. There is nobody in Zimbabwe who will reverse the land issue. The land is done. And that is, it has helped. Most of us who stood firm and encouraged the late President Mugabe are seeing the fruits. Mugabe Changarai's family is still exporting flowers. Chamisa's flowers. I know a company of Chamisa which exports flowers to Belgium and to Netherlands. I can intercept the flowers and mark them from his farm and bring them to the public. But these are the people who never wanted this land reform to happen. It is up to the people of Zimbabwe themselves and those watching and listening that time has come. They have come in another way now again. They have come in a format of a regime change. A regime change where George Soros pays NGOs to surround you, to blacklist you, give you bad names. They say when you want to kill a dog, you have to give it names and later on slaughter it. There are people in Zimbabwe themselves, traitors, homemade traitor cliques that give false intelligence to His Excellency President Mnangagwa. Those should be warned that we patriots who have also stood for this nation, who have worked for this nation, tirelessly without asking for a penny. The only penny that I got was when President Mugabe met me in Addis Ababa and asked me, the late, how are you paying your bills in these hotels, my son? May his soul rest in peace. He gave me $1,322. $1,322 to pay my bill in Radisson Blue. That was the time when I said, Your Excellency, you need to have a transition. And unfortunately, when he went back, he told the wife that what is this thing called a transition? Then the wife started the transition. It is history. But my great leader, my great mentor, the great person who mentored, who gave us impetus to speak like Africans, a great man who inspired me, a great proud guy who made me proud whenever I could stand in Brussels, whenever I could challenge Morgan Changarai, whenever I could stand. You can see my name in the book of Leti Morgan Changarai, page number 53 of his book, in the deep end, book called the deep end or something like that. Because I was a thorn in Changarai's ribs. I was a thorn looking, telling him, why are you calling for sanctions? To kill yourself, to kill your people. Today, these sanctions, some have been partially removed. Some are still there. So today, as we speak about the Commonwealth, Rwanda is hosting the Commonwealth. Zimbabwe 2 years ago applied to return to the Commonwealth. There are those that are saying there are no benefits of returning to the Commonwealth. I changed this topic to accommodate those who want to say we don't want sanctions, we don't want to join the Commonwealth, and those who say we want to join the Commonwealth. Because the Commonwealth is Commonwealth, but Commonwealth is part of the colonization strand that colonized Africa, left us where we are, taught us the English we have, but left us with a lot of disadvantages. My own country, where I come from 37 years ago, or 42 years ago, we are overthrown by Idi Amin. We went to Tanzania, where I met most of the liberation movement, including Constantine Chiwenga, when he was a younger man. He's younger than me. I'm about 2 years old. Yes, 3 years older than General Chiwenga. I met several people. I met Vox Binavashi. I met several people, several generals, when we were younger people in Tanzania. The Tanzanian TPDF Defense Forces helped us to overthrow Idi Amin. I was in Chikosi Maalum 208 KJ that moved on to Kampala to topple dictator Idi Amin. The Commonwealth stood by and watched us as we killed each other. The former Prime Minister Edward Heath, the late, engineered a coup in my own country, gave power to Idi Amin. I want to tell Zimbabweans watching and listening to this tape that we have suffered the plight of the Commonwealth itself. 1971 coup, I was going to primary senior secondary school the same day on 25th. My father left me to go because he was being looked for, having been a politician in the Obote I government. He left me to go to school with my box. And here I am today. I've never forgotten that day when Idi Amin soldiers were stopping each car, taking out people, shooting them at a close range. Anybody who was perceived to be Obote's supporter and black, anybody black or Obote supporter was killed. Today, the Commonwealth has given quite a lot of inspiration to people, and also has also given us a lot of gloom. They have not stood to the Commonwealth itself. They have not given us the direction There are so many things, there are so many reparation agreements that have never occurred. I remember in Kenya, the Mau Mau are looking for their money. The torture of the Mau Mau freedom fighters. These are some of the things that we should now normalize, that we have now a global village of 54 countries in Africa that were injured. Reparations are supposed to be a healing process. That once the reparations are done, there's healing. Indeed, I agree with those as a lecturer of political science, because I do visit universities here and there to speak. If you call me for 2 hours, I will speak for 2 hours and you'll pay highly on some of these topics. Indeed, I agree that payments should be made. Reparations should be made for a healing process. Onyango, switch off your thing, please. The healing process to go on. Headquarters, switch on. Anybody, mics should be off. I'm about to conclude and hand it over to Professor P.L.O. Lumumba. Any of this situation that you see must be healed. You can't say a redemption strategy is not important. You can't say just to say slavery was very bad. People need reparations. You need to reparate, to put it back to life. Redemption strategy is a healing process. We are not going to read notebooks like Mandela left us with poems. When Mandela died in South Africa, I did not cry. But when Mugabe died, I came and saw and buried him. Yes, I flew in. Even some people did not know. They only saw me emerging out of the stadium. I flew in and I thank my friends. I thank His Excellency President Emerson. I came in. I saw. There's one man I had wanted that if he ever dies, I must go and say hi to the last minute, to give me an inspiration that you can work freely without putting money first, but you work for your people, for this continent. I went and buried for a few days, and I want to thank President Uhuru Kenyatta. We saw each other there in Harare, and I came back. It is sad, therefore, that Africa should not be played about and played about. We be told now this conference in Rwanda, Zimbabwe wants to be readmitted in the Commonwealth. What then happens with the 20-year-old sanctions that have hurt people? Medicines are not in the hospital. Diseases that could be cured could not be cured. What happens? People died of diseases because you have put sanctions on a small country, that ministers from these smaller countries cannot go there to collect and sit down. We lost so many people. But all in all, it is up to the people of Zimbabwe. I'm not the foreign minister of Zimbabwe, neither do I do their foreign policy. I am an international activist who is against some of international agencies like ICC, ICJ, because these are colonial vestiges that have been brought on the continent of Africa to frustrate on the Africans. Does it worry you that only Africans are the ones standing trial in the ICC? Does it? I fought ICC and defeated it. Anybody thinking that he can defeat Matanga on international law, anywhere, international scene, whether Zimbabwe or what, you can't defeat me on there. I know all the corners. I fought Babugo is free. I fought Uhuru Kenyatta, Ruto are free. I fought Bemba is free. I vote. Saidi Gaddafi is free. I stood firm for them. I wrote my documents. You can go to the website of ICC. Application. I don't need a lawyer to write for me an application. My applications have been very constant. I've never even asked P.L.O. Lumumba to write one application for me. He's here on the platform, he will tell you. I've fought. I write my own application with my small English of Shakespeare and J.A. Bright. I did not read those books of Ogundipe and so on. I read J.A. Bright. I've made my applications. I've succeeded on Bemba. I've succeeded on Saidi Gaddafi. I've succeeded on President Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta, Deputy President William Ruto. They are here because I intervened. I exposed the ICC. Babugo is here. I succeeded. And I'm still pulling my strings with General Bashir. I'm the one who told Bashir. I visited Khartoum and I told Bashir, the French will finish you. When Bashir told me that he had given the French to reorganize Khartoum, I told him, are you all right? Are you, Your Excellency, are you really all right? Do you have advisors here? The French pay for 3/4 of the ICC. All the judges are paid salary from France. How will they help you to reorganize the Khartoum? It didn't take 6 months before a military coup came. Bashir is in custody today. I've stopped the ICC. I've told General Duglo, my comrade, my friend. I knew Duglo when he was a lieutenant colonel. He was not a general. The one who has taken over power in Khartoum. I told him the moment you hand in Bashir to the ICC, Duglo, the next person is you, and I will not come there to support you. You will be handed over. Because if you hand your general, then you must also go. Because you are the commander of the Janjaweed, the militia that was killing people in Darfur. So you hand him over, then they will come for you also. I've been honest. I've defended Africa. And for anybody naively, myopic, underrating my strength of knowing international intelligence is very silly. Very silly, shallow, prudish, sardonic. That anyone of any kind could imagine that I don't know international intelligence would be a very stupid person. I know Africa in and out. There's no, I told you that 5-7 years ago, Professor P.L.O, I said there will be a proxy war in East Africa. There is a proxy war. Is there no proxy war now? Professor, I told you, there's a war here that the French are making a war. Is it not there now? M23 rebels are here. We are meeting in Kigali when M23 have captured the territory of Congo. Is that not a proxy war? When I talked to that, it took only 4 months, and the proxy war struck. The first culprit was Burundi. Nkurunziza was overthrown in the morning. It took Tanzanian TPDF soldiers to cross over to Bujumbura to remove the general. That is the essence of knowing the African situation. I don't work for George Soros. I hate him. And let him hear, can I repeat? I hate him. Because George Soros only uses opposition leaders in Africa to destroy their countries while he's seated in New York. Has it come to your minds, you Zimbabweans, that George Soros is opposite the UN and opposite Trump? If you have gone to New York at all, their towers are opposite each other. But nobody has issued a warrant of arrest for George Soros. He's an American outfit of CIA. So when you deal with him, you are collecting that money to kill your country. One of the problems why I don't disagree with a younger boy who was not born when I was already fighting and I knew how to handle AK-47 Bob Wine in Kampala. He's not worth my salt. is not even worth my firstborn. My firstborn is 43 years old, and Bob Wine is about 41. So why should I deal with somebody who should be playing music at my ceremony? I can't. And I've told him, if you go on picking money from George Soros to come here and make Ugandans. Have you ever seen Ugandans coming to the streets that they are following you? No. Because Ugandans have seen the truth. They know who are the real fighters. They know who are the real fighters. So in this world, when you are making a bed, make a bed and leave some space without putting thorns, because you might sleep on those thorns tomorrow. When Besigye was making laws that were chasing Matanga, that Matanga was being chased in Harare, whenever I could arrive in Harare, the director of external intelligence is also in Sheraton waiting from Uganda. Until one day I caught him in a lift. I said, now we are here, I can throw you through this lift. Why are you following me even here? I've suffered. I've suffered an assassination attempt. I am still here talking for Africa. And nothing will deter me as long as I'm alive. I am not interested in your money. You can have your money, but your money, you might eat it on the streets. I'm telling you because you must be careful, the people of Zimbabwe. The wind that is gathering around you is not a very good wind. It's not. The Americans are with you, gathering every bit of intelligence. They have come all the way up to Lusaka, Zambia. They have come all the way up to Malawi. Puppet states, satellite states gathering around you. My friend E.D., I've known him for 23 years now. I don't go around boasting. I have never come there to ask him for even a penny. And I will never. If he gives me, fine. I put it in a charity. But I stand by my truth. That is what I am. And that is why I'm saying I put this topic for you people. And I would like to invite Professor P.L.O. Lumumba. If you are ready, sir, that's the much I can talk for even 5 hours. I'm one of the few people who does not write things. I write everything on the paper. No. My intelligence is very clear, very different. I just pick my things. I know the subject. This is the thing I studied. I have not studied the grave digging, which is a science. P.L.O. Lumumba, thank you. You can unmute. Unmute your machine.
Yes. I've heard you loud and clear talking about the mother continent.
Yes.
And there are many things that you've said covering the Commonwealth, covering the state of the continent of Africa, which you cannot be contradicted on. But I want to be faithful to the subject that you broached that relate to the Commonwealth and pose the question why these institutions remain alive. You will or will not agree with me that at the end of the colonial project, the colonial masters, whoever they were, had an architecture that was designed to protect their interest in the former colonies. And despite whatever it is that you want to say, it cannot be denied that institutions such as the Commonwealth are in this category. Their pretensions notwithstanding. Of course, when you look at the Commonwealth and its goals, it says that it talks about the rule of law, it talks about democracy, it boasts that the Commonwealth countries have a GDP combined of 13 trillion and that is bigger than the Eurozone. That is the veneer that we see. But if you look at the psychology of the Commonwealth, And not only the Commonwealth, but the organization that puts the former French colonies together, and even the one that brings together the former Portuguese colonies, the agenda is one, that these are neo-colonial organizations whose agenda is to give the former colonial powers the feeling that they still control their empire. So that I want to imagine for myself that when the British are sitting alone in the absence of all these former colonies, they thump their chests and says, we are still in control. And that is why, for example, it is headquartered in the United Kingdom, in London, I think. If it were that it was an organization of equal states, and you are to go by the countries that are members, you would have it outside of the United Kingdom. If it were true that it was an organization that brings in sovereign states of equal status, it would not be the case that the monarch of the British is the head of the Commonwealth. And it is us in the continent of Africa particularly to blame for the continued existence of these organizations. If the African countries were organized regionally as East Africa, as South Africa, as ECOWAS, as Central Africa, as the Maghreb, and our organization were thorough and proper, and if we were organized continentally as the African Union, we would not need bodies such as the Commonwealth. We would be dealing with them as African Union. We would be dealing with them as East African Community. And this nostalgia that we appear to have, that we must be members of the Commonwealth, so that when Zimbabwe, for example, is expelled from the Commonwealth, it becomes a big issue. And the possible return of Zimbabwe to the Commonwealth is seen as something that is great, a great achievement. These are things that underline our inferiority complex as a people. And the sooner we realize that, the safer we are. And therefore, I must say that this is the time when Africa must interrogate herself, interrogate our institutions, and ask ourselves very uncomfortable questions. You can see already now that there is a new scramble for Africa. You see, the Chinese are here scrambling for Africa. The Americans are here scrambling for Africa. The British, after the Brexit, are a lot more active in the continent of Africa. The Arabs are here scrambling for Africa. Even the Turks, the old Ottoman Empire, is beginning to reemerge. And we are welcoming them all. Not that it is wrong to welcome them, but we forget that some of their apparently well-intentioned activities are essentially in the nature of a Trojan horse. They are coming into our arena, and before we know it, they'll control our affairs. We may continue to have our elections, we may continue to elect our black heads of states and government, but in truth, the real power will rest elsewhere. And that is why I think that we as Africans have an opportunity now to ask ourselves the fundamental question that I've talked about. Otherwise, as I've said, and I repeat again, in the next 25 years, the continent of Africa will be recolonized. This time round, the colonization will be a lot more subtle. They will not bring in their administrators. The administrators will be our own. They'll divide us, and indeed, they're already dividing us along ethnic lines. And once they have created ethnic animosity amongst us, it will be very easy to manipulate and control us. So my submission to this conversation is, let us strengthen our institutions. I was very disappointed myself when sanctions are levied against Zimbabwe. It is the people who suffer. Those in positions of political power never suffer when they are sanctioned. I would have expected SADC to rally around Zimbabwe, to cushion Zimbabwe and Zimbabweans against the pain that was visited against them through the sanctions. I would have expected African Union to do the same. But what did we see and what do we see? Tails between our legs. We leave Zimbabwe to the vagaries of the manipulation of foreign countries, and we do nothing as our kith and kin in Zimbabwe are suffering and laboring under economic sanctions. We must wake up. If we don't wake up, we will be eaten. This world is still governed by the law of the jungle, the dying of the least suitable and survival of the fittest. You know, if you look at Africa, even what we have as armies really don't count for much because all the weapons that we use are imported and most of them are second-hand arms. And that is why nobody fears nor respects us. Look at little North Korea. The reason why it is feared, it is because it can defend ourselves. African countries can't defend themselves. Today, if the Americans were to station one warship in the Mediterranean, one in the Indian Ocean, one in the Atlantic Ocean, it can decimate the entire Africa within one day. That is how weak we are. And the truth is, we must become strong before we are respected. And that strength, unfortunately, will have to be militarily strong, will have to be economically, and then, of course, politically. That is what we must do. Otherwise, we'll still have nostalgia for neo-colonial institutions such as the Commonwealth. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Comrade Professor P.L.O. Lumumba. You have mentioned quite a lot of interesting points there. Are we able to stand ourselves militarily? Are we not watching several things happen on the continent of Africa while we watch and have conferences? Look at the situation in DRC Congo also. Without diverting to DRC Congo, they stick on as an example. Look, we watch until the situation grows to where it is today. That you have the leaders waking up. How many leaders in Africa can help us? Where are the Marshal Titos? Where are they gone? Where are the Nyereres on the continent gone? The Obotes, the Jomo Kenyattas, the Haile Selassie, the Sekou Toure. We've lost that breed of leadership. And therefore, it has created quite a lot of difficulties for us to move forward. Miriam, perhaps you have a few comments to make on the question of Zimbabwe. What are the benefits of its entry? Is it beneficial? Are there things? What is going to change? We have, for me, I think they can join to me. But some Zimbabweans are saying, oh, what is the benefit there? So what do you think yourself?
Maybe I do have a question first to Prof. Prof, nice to have you on the show it's still morning, and I was listening to you and a couple of things stuck out from what you said. And my question is, when you look at the Commonwealth, and I think you've expressed a lot of thoughts I've had this regarding to Commonwealth, would you term it as a larger scope of Britain's foreign policy? And for the members, especially Africa, we have 15 member states that are part of the Commonwealth. Is it a hang-on what you would perhaps term as a Stockholm syndrome, this relationship that we keep insisting? And when you look at a lot of problems that we have in this continent, much of it comes from our colonial masters, but we still find a need, to want to be associated, to be wanted, to be needed, and to be part of this. And we look at that as a token of some level of achievement if we are part of that. So is it, my first question, a larger scope of Britain's part of foreign policy?
Thank you very much, Miriam. First of all, I can't agree with you more when you say that our attraction to our former colonizers is classical Stockholm syndrome. We appear to love our former colonizers, which is sad. And this is true, particularly those of us who have education. We are the greatest culprits. In our unguarded moments, we still think that Oxford, Cambridge, and we say it with glee. And you see, even our politicians, the greatest, the apogee of their engagement is when they are invited to London to give speeches at the Chatham. That is when they think that they have now reached the apex of their politics, the apex of their education. And this is tragic and unfortunate at once. The net effect, therefore, is the British know it. The psychological domination that they have on us is that they then know we can use these puppets to good effect. And to repeat it again, you'll hear us saying, I went to the London School of Economics. I went to, what economics did you learn at the London School of Economics which is beneficial to Africa? I went to Oxford to study law. Which law did you learn for the benefit of Africa? I went to Cambridge to study anthropology. Which anthropology did you learn? And you can now see in quite a number of African countries, they've deployed Tony Blair, who is the former prime minister. They've deployed him. He is now the lead advisor in a number of African countries. What kind of advice is he giving? Why can't that advice be by former African heads of state? Why can't we be advised by Mahama? Why can't we be advised by Joyce Banda? Why can't we be advised by John Kufuor, Motlanthe, and Ifikepunye Pohamba or Sam Nujoma? There's a tragedy here. And we must therefore see the Commonwealth as a tool which the British used to very good effect for having their control economically and politically. And you'll find, for example, that the goods that we buy and our balance of trade with the Commonwealth, I think that is almost at over 10%, and they get preferential treatment. So they are looking at it in the very same way. If you look at the psychology of the rulers of today in the United Kingdom, it is no different from what it was in 1884. Remember when the British came here, they came through the Imperial British East African Company. It was all about trade, and trade is the dominant thing. And a Britain that is outside of the European Union looks to the Commonwealth and Commonwealth Africa for her raw materials. So I can't overemphasize that we are still being swung around their little fingers. And sometimes I imagine to myself, when they are sitting in Whitehall or Downing Street, the British only, and they say, oh, these little chaps in Africa, we continue to control them, as indeed we should. They are part of our fiefdom. They do not know what we are doing. What we do is to humor a few of them, confer on them titles, and allow them occasion to be at the Whitehall and to have a meeting with Her Majesty. I think that is the kind of conversation they have. And we think that is a very important thing. Then, of course, you'll have a 21-gun salute and you'll do all those things. But in their minds, you are inferior, who are to be controlled, who are to be manipulated to the detriment of our people. And the sooner we smell the coffee, the safer we are. Unfortunately, our political leaders have lost their sense of smell so that they can't smell the coffee.
Very well. And Doc, back to you.
Yeah, Prof, I know here I fall a victim of this word Cambridge, Oxford, London Guildhall, Metropolitan University. So don't kill me on this one. For my circumstances, Prof.
We must kill you because that is a statement of your inferiority complex. Why don't you talk about Makerere and Nairobi?
I have not lost. I have not lost my African accent.
Yeah.
My children, all my 8 children speak one of the best English themselves. They even laugh at me when I'm speaking because I've maintained my Ugandan accent. But my circumstances landing me there on a international refugee day like this one, I landed there. So I had to continue with my studies there. But I have not come back and said I was in Oxford, I was in Cambridge, I was in London School of Economics. No, I have maintained an African stand. But on a serious note, points that Miriam raised, let's be balanced on the fairness of the British, for example. Yes, there is quite a lot they took, but compared to other states from the metros, like the French, where almost every French territory on the continent of Africa has a war. Every French politics, it has a war. Show me one which has no war.
Doc,
Mali.
what was the source of our land problems, even here in Kenya?
I'm coming. I think I'm coming.
What was the source of that?
I was going to bring land as a factor, which is destabilizing the source. Land was the source, Miriam, but I was only giving comparative politics to the other metros of Europe that British left some things that were very, very good on the continent. For example, they didn't come back to create, apart from coming back with Idi Amin, who taught, from the time of Idi Amin, who taught them a lesson. They have never tried to come back. They learned a lesson from Aronzi and Achempong of Ghana, who overthrew Patrice Lumumba, who overthrew Nkrumah. Aronzi overthrew Baba Tafawa Balewa, and many other things. They pulled it off, but then they came with Idi Amin. After Idi Amin brought them more problems, the British now started backtracking on their foreign policy of, intervention militarily and intervention through military coups. But when you come on the land issue, it is one of the most innovative issues that we still have in most of the African countries. It's not only with the French, with the British, also in the French territory, the Portuguese. What is boiling down in Mozambique is a land issue. Because these guys came and did geological survey of our countries. They knew where. I would like to ask Professor Miriam and Douglas and the rest of you who are on the panel. When you grew up, did you know that there was oil in Turkana? We didn't know. But the French and the colonial masters knew there was oil in Turkana. The maps, the geological maps of Turkana were taken a long time ago. They knew there was oil. They knew there was oil in the Albertine region of Uganda. They knew. But they have been keeping these things, I don't know for who. And yet, every Kenyan grew up saying, take food to Turkana, take food to Turkana, take food to Turkana, take food to Turkana, take school to Turkana. Every Kenyan was being told, let's go to Turkana. But under the Turkana where they were seated, nobody tried to pump even Lake Turkana, which was called Lake Rudolph. Because some of the students, if you ask them, the previous name of Turkana is called what? It's called what? You will Google first. But ask me, it's Lake Rudolph. They even named our water Lake Rudolph. We still have a lake that feeds all of us with fish, including Professor and Miriam. Because you live near there, all of you. You eat the fish on a lake called Lake Victoria. But this lake had a name. The time they came here, there was a name. In Uganda, when you go to Uganda, it is called Narubale. Enyanja, Narubale. I don't know what Prof would tell me in Luo. In Siaya, you are next to the lake. What were you calling this lake?
It's called Namlolue.
Namlule. You see, almost like us. Narubale, you are calling it Namlule. But someone came and said, no, it is called Victoria.
But David, I want to raise an issue which you've spoken to and Miriam adverted to. You are saying, almost being the devil's advocate, that the British were much better than the French. Let me put it in, of everybody else. This is a question that Samora Machel, whom we both know and respect, once said, that question is one we should never ask. And if we ask it, we should never accept the answer given to us. It's like saying which slave master was better than the others. And there are those of us who then say that the British was a better slave master because they used indirect rule. The French was slightly better than the Portuguese. The bottom line is that all these were slave masters using the different methods, but the end result was the same. And that brings me to the land question, which you've spoken about in great detail. And look at the land question. My former teacher, Kotho Gende, used to say that the last colonial question is the land question. If you look at the land question, which is a source of conflict in Kenya today, in areas such as Laikipia, look at the parcels of land that are owned by British or foreigners. These are huge tracts of land. If you go to, even in places like Uganda, not as much as it is in Kenya, you go to Namibia, over 50% of the land is owned by the Germans, and there are not many of them. So the land question in Zimbabwe, and even in South Africa, you know that the whites own anything up to 72% of the land, and followed by the Indians and then the blacks. And these issues must be resolved. If we don't resolve them now, we are merely postponing the problem. And these are the kind of argument that I would want to hear being brought to the fore and being debated. In the case of Zimbabwe, which was one of our major topics, the decision by the Mugabe administration to seize land, as you and me know, arose out of the British reneging on an agreement that they had made with the Mugabe administration to finance the purchase of this land. And Mugabe was under necessary and immense pressure, because the very reason why the people were fighting the colonialists was to have land, which had been taken away from them. So going forward, one of the things that we must do is to be objective about this. One is not saying that, for example, the Commonwealth has not had its benefits, but I'm looking at the benefit, I'm doing the cost-benefit analysis. Some will say the Commonwealth was responsible for building infrastructure. Buruburu in Nairobi was a Commonwealth development project. And there are many projects, there are many scholarships under the Commonwealth, there is trade under the Commonwealth. But to me, these are sleep-inducing activities. These are crumbs under the table. The real agenda is that we must think big. We are going to have this meeting, this jamboree that is going to take place in Kigali, Rwanda. We'll have nice statements, nice speeches, how great the Commonwealth is, how we are countries who are brotherly and sisterly, will be lulled into a false sense of security. And as I've said, the British will go back home and say, oh, we are still in control. You saw how they were groveling when we are there. We are still in control. We are still, the sun does not set on our empire. They'll still say so. The empire is still big with over 80 countries. We are still bigger than the French, bigger than the Americans. When the Americans want to deal with our former colonies, we are the first port of call. So in their mind, we have been lulled into a false sense of security. because they have a longer view of things, and they therefore see the Commonwealth as a bulwark against China. They see the Commonwealth as a bulwark against Russia, as a bulwark against the United States of America, as a bulwark against Belgium, as a bulwark against the Ottoman Empire, because we are brotherly. And therefore, before you enter into too deep a conversation with the Chinese, remember we are brothers, but one brother is ever taking advantage over the others. And
yes, we've lost you.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
When you Google the Commonwealth, I think what you get as the definition is 54 equal states, and then you read that and understanding the background, information of these different states and even how Commonwealth came to be. It is laughable. It is laughable. And still staying with the matters land, because we know that colonialism, especially in Zimbabwe, started a very protracted, land struggle in which race, gender, ethnicity, nationality has come to play and has become a point of departure in a lot of things and a lot of problems you see today in Zimbabwe, including the sanctions. Could have President Mugabe handled the land question differently?
No. There is no way the President Mugabe would have handled. If you read the 1980 Lancaster Agreement, some of the people shouting don't know even the Lancaster Agreement, what it says. It was very clear that for 15 years, you had nothing to change even a comma, a full stop on that agreement. Because there was a lot of contention at Lancaster House in London. People wanted to walk out. The war was at the highest peak in 1980. The war was at the highest peak. Everybody wanted the fight to end. Joshua Nkomo, Robert Mugabe, Bishop Mazorewa, Dabaningi Sitole. These are the people that were, some of them were traitors, betraying the stand of Robert Mugabe. Joshua Nkomo, people wanted to say, we go back and finish the fight. But the Prime Minister, Margaret Thatcher, and the others said, look, this is the opportunity now. And Robert Mugabe with ZANURA, which is Zimbabwe National Liberation Army, ZIPRA. There is ZIPRA and ZANURA. ZIPRA was for Joshua Nkomo, and ZANURA, which is now for ZANU Patriotic Front of Robert Mugabe, with Mnangagwa, Chiwenga, everybody. These factions, there was quite a lot of heated argument when it came to land. Land was going to break the Lancaster Agreement. So it took days with Harold Wilson and the other people. So that when he was coming to the tail end of his power, the former Prime Minister of Britain, it took time for them to analyze, to say, let's give you some time, relax, drink English coffee, and then we come back. So when they came back in the Lancaster Agreement, Miriam, they hammered out and said, for 15 years, the land issue in Zimbabwe would remain in the hands of whoever owns the land. But the willing seller, the willing buyer, if I wanted to purchase land from you, the British government, that is what P.L.O has said, renegated. They renegated from their principles, which they had agreed in the Lancaster House, that the willing buyer, willing seller, after you sell the land, a white man sells the land to a black man, that white man is compensated.
So if that is the case, so why was Robert Mugabe vilified, of course, under the disguise of human rights abuses, of course, going after the opposition and
It is coming.
music and all that.
Medium, exactly. We went to Abuja. We flew into Abuja summit. Where the Thabo Mbeki, the Mini Zuma, myself, and several other people in the Abuja summit, where it was agreed that the agreement of 1980, because things were now bad, it was coming to a very dangerous situation. War veterans were coming out to say, we shall kill these guys. We need the land. And it was agreed that willing buyer, willing seller, there would be compensation. Do you know what happened? 1998. Mr. Tony Blair arrives, the Labour Party wins an election in Britain. Miriam, this is where things went wrong. When the Labour Party won an election, John Major had hammered up an agreement of saying we shall compensate. If the whites want to go home, they will sell the land to black empowerment organization so that it is a smooth transfer of land, like what you do in Kenya. The policy that Jomo Kenyatta laid up in Kenya is still working.
Is it true?
Yes, you can. Well, it still worked. The policy which Obote, I want to tell you frankly, Obote used in Uganda. Obote had said, all the Indians, the African, the Ugandan Indians who have British connection, all Indians should leave the rural area and they leave those small shops of Bududa, where the father of the Minister of Home Affairs of Britain is, leave that area and come to Mbale town or Jinja or Tororo. Is like telling people leave the rural area, come to Nairobi and come to Kisumu, Nakuru, Eldoret, so that the rural area people can start enjoying the fruits, because the communities were living everywhere. That is where the trouble began.
David, I want to weigh in as you hold your thought on the question that Miriam has asked.
Yeah.
Always with the help of hindsight, you can say it could have been done better. But we must also look at the circumstances, and I think David has spoken to the circumstances. That land was always going to be the issue. You have a small white population, they own acres and acres of land which were illegally obtained. You have fought a war on the promise that you are going to restore land to the people. You have entered into good faith negotiations with the guarantor of this minority regime, that we are going to follow to a certain extent what was the Kenyan model, and in the White Highlands we are going to give you money to buy from these farmers. Once that has been done, you now go back on your promise and you expect those who have fought on the basis of restoring land to do nothing about it. So the whites' attempts are indeed made to persuade them. And I think that what Mugabe and the ZANU-PF administration then did in terms of this forcible seizure of land is what I call the nuclear option. The nuclear option was used because the soft option based on negotiation was not going to work. And of course, nobody expected that Robert Mugabe was going to use the nuclear option. It is true that when the whites departed, what then happened is land husbandry may not have been as was expected, but that is something that I think can be cured. My own view now is to rationalize and to ensure that the mistakes that were made were not made, to ensure that the redistribution process does not benefit politicians. Because part of the problem you have in many African countries is that you seize land in the name of the people, then it doesn't go to the people. It goes to the politically privileged. We've seen that in Kenya. We have seen elements of that in Zimbabwe. And I think that the Zimbabweans should have this conversation now that we seize land and it is in our possession and in the possession of an African government. How do we distribute this land in a manner that does not undermine the economic utilization of land? Because you also don't want to subdivide land into uneconomic units. So there is a balancing act here, because land is only a factor of production, and its proper use is what will guarantee food and prosperity to the people of Zimbabwe. So in a nutshell, I am agreeing that Zimbabwe and President Mugabe was pushed to the wall, and they had to resort to the nuclear option, which they then deployed, and many were consumed. Of course, when you use a nuclear approach, there'll be many, there'll be collateral damage. And it's that collateral damage that we continue to complain about. But time is now that we must now ask the Mnangagwa administration. And I think this is something, the land question in Zimbabwe is one that should not be dealt with on the basis of partisan party politics. It is the kind of thing that one expects the Mnangagwa administration to have a bipartisan approach, a Zimbabwean approach that ignores whether one is in the opposition or one is in government, because every Zimbabwean is entitled to have the kind of land that they can utilize for the good of themselves and the community. That is my thought.
And Prof, there is something that you have, which I must add on what you have said. It is not Mugabe pushed on the line. The war veterans actually told Mugabe, we are going to overthrow you. Yeah, I was there. They said they will overthrow him. Because they said we went to the bush to fight for what? We are now almost 20 years, coming to 15 years of independence. The time they put in Lanca's house has expired. What did we die for? That was it. What did we die for? And another mistake that was made on the question of land was clear short. The then Minister for International Development, who herself is Irish, and as you know, she was colonized by the British. The British colonized fellow Irish whites across in Belfast, Northern Ireland. She said, as Irish, why should I compensate a white settler who has gone there and grabbed the land? I was also grabbed. Who has colonized, who has compensated me? And she cancelled the agreement. By stroke of a pen, I'll give you, Miriam, after this, I'm sending you a letter, which Clear Short, I have it. Clear Short wrote that letter. It is upon that letter that I stood in Brighton Conference Center. I said, Your Excellency, Prime Minister, you should have engaged Mugabe instead of isolating Mugabe.
Correct. I can't agree with you more.
I said you should, you know, we grew up knowing Ronald Reagan contained the American bad elements. Containment was the value of British Empire. But how they got isolate and put sanctions. Where did these sanctions came from? Is where
Miriam and David, before you weigh in on the Zimbabwean question, which we can go on and on over, but which I think we have given done some justice to. One would want to know, we have a CHOGM meeting which will be taking place in Rwanda, and it's taking place at a time when there are quite a number of things are happening within the region, which we cannot avoid. Although David thought he was going off, I didn't think he was, because as we are speaking now today, there is a meeting of heads of states, a summit and emergency meeting, which is being hosted by the president of Kenya here in Nairobi on the question of the Democratic Republic of Congo.
Yes.
And we must also remember that the Democratic Republic of Congo is the newest member of the East African Community. We must also remember that the Democratic Republic of Congo is a major player in terms of peace in this region. I would want, in the context of this ongoing conflict, on Sunday, you remember that the military chiefs met here in Nairobi and said that they are going to deploy. I do not know whether they are going to, and you remember there is also MONUSCO, which is the UN, which is deployed in the Democratic Republic of Congo in the eastern part. In the face of all these, we are seeing an Africa which has very many conflicts. We see conflicts in northern Mozambique, eastern Congo, Central African Republic, Burkina Faso, southern Cameroon, Darfur in Sudan, Tigray in Ethiopia, and other low-intensity conflicts. I would want, in the face of all these, to know if you, David, has a sneak preview of the agenda that is going to be discussed in Kigali. I would want to know, because you don't want a situation where, in the face of all these conflicts, what we'll have is to talk about trade and talk about Ukraine. and I wouldn't be surprised if Ukraine is going to be dominant, and then we are going to be told to issue a communique of the Commonwealth about Ukraine and about sanctions. If I'm not going too far, Miriam, I would want to hear David weigh in. And if there's a sneak preview, then we can also look at it.
Professor, you are putting me on the weighing machine.
You are the devil's advocate today, so we have to interrogate you, Doc.
Yes. You are putting me on the weighing machine. I have a letter here inviting me for the summit. And the letter reads in summary, the People's Forum. I am going in the People's Forum, which will climax. I think they usually call us to go and understand. When Commonwealth is anywhere else, I've been going. So my name is in the data. So they have said we are in the People's Forum, only working by people together across the nations, governments, and a collaboration with civil society. Can we find new ideas and solutions to tackle climate change and other things? Now, when you tell me you are putting me on spot on, is here.
I checked the itinerary earlier, and I don't think that that is on the. So I was looking at the whatever it is that it will be done starting today.
It is not there, Prof.
But Prof has posed a very important question, and Doc, I think we talked about this yesterday during our yesterday's show. President Kenyatta, of course, is meeting with his heads of state from the East African community. Prof, and maybe you can give us an answer to this question. DRC has been consistent in accusing Rwanda of being at the heart of this conflict, and of course Rwanda has denied these allegations. So before we put a force together as the East African Community bloc to go help the DRC, should these issues that the DRC are raising with Rwanda be looked at before we can even form a force? Of course, the DR has said Rwanda cannot be part of that force, but is it about time maybe we looked at these issues, if at all we were to get to the heart of this conflict in the Democratic Republic of Congo?
I think you should have allowed me to.
Okay, David, weigh in, and then I'll come in.
Yeah, but the professor himself doesn't get the answer yet. He wanted me to give him a preview of what is going to happen. Okay. What is happening at the moment, Miriam, Professor, there is nothing going to come out. Do you know why? Nothing is going to come out because the same people who funded the same rebels are on the table. I said that. I don't know why people don't get it. I've said that time and time again. M23 is not coming from Venus or Mars or Jupiter. It has an origin. And the arms, the sophisticated arms, to be able to occupy a town a city of somebody, you must have support. And we know this support. So why do we go to a meeting and hide? That is my worry now. And that's what my professor wants me to come out for me to be on the firing squad. But my worry here is very clear that the meeting, until the rebels, let me tell you, until the rebels themselves and the heads of state come out and say, yes, I've been giving these people arms because they have also, you have also been giving arms
to FD.
To so and so.
Yes.
If that is not done, if I were President Kenyatta, I would call them to go back and say, think again and come. These leaders must be in that hall alone and point fingers at each other. Because, sincerely speaking, I take the Tanzanian route. Tanzania seems to be saying, wacha wamalize ndio nikuje. Because the rebels themselves know where the arms come from. And I gave an example, Miriam. I have been giving you an example of Kony. When we went to meet Kony, Kony told us where he gets his arms. Not only me, he told the whole UN meeting, and including the Sudan, Khartoum government representative was with us in the meeting. He said that we have been getting arms from Khartoum because Salva Kiir and Garang were also getting arms from Museveni. You get my point, P.L.O? He said that openly. The SPLA were being armed by Kenya and Uganda. Therefore, we now have, they have stopped. Since they have come here on the delegation with you, we are not going to go back there to get any arms. But now this meeting, which P.L.O is asking a very hard question, is easier to enter the kingdom of God than go through that question. I better go through the needle. Because you are directly accusing the people seated on that table now. There is someone who has given arms. And the DRC Congo is equally not safe, because it is also being accused by President Kagame
of supporting that the FD.
That they also support the former Interahamwe.
The forces for
yes,
liberation of Rwanda. So
yes,
look,
and then also Uganda has accused DRC Congo
Uganda
for neglecting.
Uganda owes DR. Remember the ICJ court? So we also still have a problem.
Miriam, if we go there, we still have a problem there. If we touch it there, it will be crowded. The peace talks. If we touch it there, P.L.O will laugh at us. The peace talks will collapse. Uganda went into Congo. Yes, it has managed to do short-term analysis. For people, the rebels will take longer time to reorganize, and they are now gone into an insurgency format. They could mushroom later on, tactically.
They have intensified.
But let me ask this question.
Inside Congo, there is intensification. There is a fight. Yes.
Let me ask this question, which really is one that is academic now. One would have assumed that during the process of determining whether Congo DRC should be a member of East African Community, these are some of the issues that should have been on the table. They would have said, you remember, for example, the European Union. Under the European Union, before you become a member, there's what are called the Copenhagen Principles. In other words, we must tick boxes to say on matters of peace and security and resolve issue. Do you now, and you'll answer once I've concluded, that perhaps we left too many issues unresolved and brought in the Democratic Republic of Congo into East Africa? And no sooner has she settled into the community then we are now seeing all these conflicts emanating with threats of withdrawing ambassadors from Kigali and vice versa. And the tragedy is that the conflict is now becoming a communal conflict. The Banyamulenge in Eastern Congo are now being attacked by the people who think they are indigenous Congolese. And so they are being rejected in Congo and being rejected in Rwanda. And we now have very quick solutions, or attempting to have quick solutions. Military heads meet in Nairobi. But is there a conventional war that is going on in the Democratic Republic of Congo that is going to be addressed by a conventional or conventional armies? Number two, you have already said this. Is it not proper that we have independent parties investigating within a very restricted period the source of the conflict in the Democratic Republic of Congo so that these issues can be settled? You know, in terms of peace settlement, even if the parties cannot agree immediately, they can enter into a modus vivendi to agree to continue to exist as the issues are being resolved. Because I fear that this idea of deploying the army, this idea of having these strong arm methods is only going to exacerbate the problem. And it's not lost on me, David, that only last week, President Tshisekedi invited the King of Belgium to the Democratic Republic of Congo, and he was in Kinshasa and he was in Bukavu. I won't be surprised if President Tshisekedi invites the Belgians to come and help stabilize Eastern Congo. So we are in danger of seeing the second Congo War, which will draw in East Africa, and you never know. You also remember that the president of Angola tried to mediate between President Kagame and President Tshisekedi. So it is so confused that it worries me. Remember also that Congo is a member of SADC as well as being a member of East African Community. Remember Tanzania is also a member of SADC as well as being a member of the East African Community. Remember South Sudan herself has its own problems. So we are in a very murky environment for which we may not have answers during this engagement, but one wants to have these issues placed on the table if this dispute is to be resolved.
Yes, I 100% do agree with you that the Commonwealth heads of state in Kigali must now also look at the conflict because it's very close near them. Actually, they have come near the theater of operation. So that one, it won't escape. Already Tshisekedi has written to the British Prime Minister, Miriam, you saw the letter saying, we need you to tell Rwanda to stop attacking and capturing our territory. Just to sum up this on Congo, let me tell you frankly, you asked an academic question. Is it, why didn't we put this on the table before?
We questioned here, Doc. Did you not have this conversation and we went there? Is it the right thing right now for the DR to join East African community owing to these so many issues that were still unsettled?
Exactly. Look, the joining of East African community is a wider scope of African integration. P.L.O talks about African unity every time. Circumstances. But P.L.O, you have asked and put me on a knife edge. And me, when someone puts me on a knife edge, I come back to answer the truth. Can I tell you the truth? These guys are hiding an agenda of expansionism. I close my case on that.
I hear you need not elaborate. I'm just reading Voltaire, who says that every time you speak the truth, but yes, not every truth must be spoken.
Yes, so I have kept quiet on that.
But
honestly, we are simply, you know, we are simply hiding something. It is, we want a state. Why don't we say openly?
You have spoken the truth, but don't speak every truth.
Yes, I have kept quiet. So in these circumstances, I just want to thank those who have been listening.
Doc, before you thank those who have been listening, I want us to perhaps go back to where we started, even in the spirit of speaking the truth. Owing to all these things we've been looking at and the history of Zimbabwe and Britain, my question therefore is, why would Zimbabwe want to rejoin Commonwealth? I think we'll have that conversation hanging, and then we can
we touched on it. Maybe P.L.O can touch.
You can have the final word. Let me speak to it, then you'll have, to me, it beggars belief, to use an old English expression. It beggars belief that Zimbabwe would have as a priority rejoining the Commonwealth. And it is this Stockholm thing that you talked about. The desire to be inside, that they are feeling cold and lonely outside of this body. My own view is Zimbabwe should be much more focused on being a good member of SADC, must be focused on being a good member of the African Union, and should be telling other African nations that really our long-term health as a people lies in strengthening our Pan-African institutions, not belonging into bodies in which we'll be bullied and talked down to. I'm surprised. And that, in my view, is something the Mnangagwa administration should revisit. If I were asked to advise them, I would tell them, forget about this Commonwealth, forget about these neo-colonial institutions, persuade others to leave it. Come back to Africa, to SADC, to AU, and then let's make our Africa strong, and we'll engage with these boys.
Okay. That's a very good academic, serious, let me play devil's advocate here. And I might convince P.L.O. When the heart is not working, what does a surgeon do? The surgeon looks for what we call a bypass. And this statement, I hope our studio are recording. We want all this to be cut into several clips. Zimbabwe needs to rejoin. The re-entry of Zimbabwe is a legal, economic, political bypass to the sanctions, against the sanctions. Once Zimbabwe returns to the 54 nations, the men who started the sanctions were the same ones you are coming back to. So, no, wait. We are coming back to say you are readmitting us. But you sent us away. We expelled yes. But we still have a disease that has attacked our heart. I'm now, P.L.O knows that mediation and the peace process, you go higher. I am now going higher. I am finding medicine for the ailing heart. That when you come in the 54 nation now, you say, hello, I've returned. But I have a problem with one of my wives who was your friend. And that problem is America. Now, can the Commonwealth Secretary General and the British government ask America to remove sanctions? How about that? I'll earn about 10 marks. Out of 10, I'll get 8. P.L.O, how about that? I'm using a political economic bypass. Our re-entry is political economic bypass. When I saw the ICC cases were going to be very dangerous, I went for a legal bypass, a legal political bypass.
David, I agree with you.
Yes.
To the politician, to practicing politicians, they would dismiss my approach as armchair theory.
No.
Which
By the way,
let me make my point.
Before you finish, you have a lot of support.
No,
Do you know some of them in Zimbabwe now? Why
Yeah.
I changed the topic, P.L.O?
Yeah.
You actually, they are now celebrating you because they say, why do we join?
Yeah, but that is my view. So this political pragmatism, to what end and for how long? Because you are expected, when Zimbabwe now begs to join the Commonwealth, in many ways it is an act of surrender. And I do not want the Zimbabweans to surrender, because once you have surrendered, history has taught us that once you surrender, you will be punished and you will be vilified. You've been punished, your economy has been beaten by these fellows, and then they want you to go and grovel and lick their boots, tell them we can survive without you, tell them that we can do our things within an African context. There's going to be pain before there is gain, but this is the path that we have chosen. And once you do that, you will earn respect, you will create an economy that is designed to withstand the tremors from external forces such as the Commonwealth. I hold the view that there are avenues which can be pursued by Zimbabwe, and that Zimbabwe should not surrender to the diktats of neo-colonial powers.
Okay. I am equally.
Doc, it's okay to say you've changed your mind.
No, I am not.
It's a good mind that changes when it is confronted with.
No.
So David, you'll have to summarize.
Let's be honest, Miriam.
Yes.
It is not changing. I am not changing any position. I brought this question to a researcher never says I am right. P.L.O will tell you, am I wrong, P.L.O? You can't bring your theory and say it is very right. Therefore, I don't need to listen to another person. I also gave you that perhaps, or maybe I should have used the word perhaps, because the foreign minister of Zimbabwe is in Kigali as we speak.
But Doc, being the great Pan-Africanist that you are, just look at it from that lens.
Yeah, I am looking at the lens that I want an African country that is not bleeding.
At the expense.
I can be a Pan-African, but I can't be a Pan-African when people are bleeding. This country is bleeding from an economic hardship where their money is even being devalued day in, day out. Okay? If you are given a responsibility, what can you do? You are asked as a researcher, a scholar, a professor of international relations. How do you handle this? Do we go in? Do we go out? Do we remain where we are? Do we tell them to hell? We are already gone. Because it is a question of which is on the table now. That's why I'm saying maybe why part of the Zimbabwe system is saying let's go to Kigali and see whether they will admit us. And then there is another part of P.L.O and Miriam and others saying, hello, no, you punished us enough, we have suffered enough, we have been resilient, let's stay where we are.
And we still have some dignity left as a people.
Yes, we have dignity. You chased us without even giving us notes. Okay, let's stand. Now, but the common denominator, what are we both sides trying to achieve? Both sides want to achieve a stable, vibrant livelihood of the people of Zimbabwe. So that is where the leader of Zimbabwe finds himself. That's why we changed this topic. Instead of saying about sanctions and why should return, we say what benefits. And as from Miriam and the P.L.O and the other people who are watching, some have said they will agree with P.L.O and the Miriam. Some will say perhaps, and I'm not saying that's what the Zimbabwe government is saying. Perhaps they are using an economic political economic bypass, a bypass to cure the heart problem, the ailing heart, which has got a problem. That what is the ailing heart is the economy, medium. But if you look at the Zimbabweans themselves, some of them are not interested.
Yeah, because you have to look at what is the source of this heart.
They said they suffered a lot. They suffered a lot. Their country was brought down to chaos. It went almost to the dogs. So some of them are not. And it is true, the opinion is divided. So I want to thank you, Onyango. I want to give you 1 minute just to say what you had. You have listened to our discussion.
Doctor, on the same note, Nigeria also had the same fate with the Commonwealth sometimes back during the reign of Sani Abacha.
Yes.
Nigeria stayed out of Commonwealth for some time. After Abacha's death, when Obasanjo came in as president, they asked for readmission to the Commonwealth. Is it not the same case that the Zimbabwe are also applying? Because I concur with your sentiments.
Yes, I think. Thank you very much, Onyango. I think I have got a support here. It is true, and then Douglas left because of, but he had supported me on it. The thing here, Miriam, is we have a disease. The disease is killing Zimbabwe are sanctions. Sanctions coming from a sister or a kin and a kith of the British, or the brother of the British, that's America. Don't you think that if they came to the Commonwealth, they could have a say to write to President Joe Biden, this country, as observed, is back to us. It will stand by the Commonwealth regulations, rules, this and that and that. Therefore, why don't you remove the sanctions? Let them trade with everybody they want to see in the world. I think that is what Matata thinks. I don't know. I am not speaking on behalf of anybody, but as a researcher, a scholar like you, as all of you are researching, Miriam, you're a scholar, you are going at school, you are getting all this. Your teacher will be very pleased if you gave two of these options. Perhaps, by saying perhaps, the second one is perhaps. But the first one is a definite answer that, given the mistreatment you have given us, what is it that we are getting by going back? So in a nutshell, Miriam, you are saying the British should come and apologize to the Zimbabweans for the wrong that they did to expel them from the Commonwealth.
Yeah,
and then, which is a long order, which they might not do. They will bring conditions that pay back this, pay the farmers, which Emerson PD has done. President Mnangagwa has done so. The few whites that want farmers who wanted their compensation, they are being compensated. So why is it that there are sanctions still holding this country to where it is? That is our next question after the Commonwealth has taken off and we have read the communique. For now, I want to thank you, Miriam. You brought tough questions on the scene, and I want to thank P.L.O, Lumumba, and others who have been watching us. This has been extended diplomatic leaks that we always brought a topic. What are the benefits that Zimbabwe will get? What benefits will it get if it joins the Commonwealth? Are there benefits? Yes or no? Are they benefit? Miriam says no. We say perhaps they would be. If they joined, the sanctions could be removed completely, because you cannot turn up and give the member state sanctions within its own, unless it has done something else. Could it be that they have seen the elections coming next year? It could be very dangerous for them to join, because they will have to abide by the Commonwealth monitors and observers. Could it be? Just take it from me, it looks that way. So thank you very much. If it joins, if it doesn't join, for us, our role as a media house, as journalists, as investigative journalists and analysts and powerful people like P.L.O. Lumumba who have come on our show, thank you very much. We need to give advice to these some African countries. Don't give the jobs to Tony Blair. We are also here. We can give advice. Thank you very much, Miriam. Thank you very much. All of you who have been watching us, this was Diplomatic Leaks. The question, Commonwealth starts tomorrow. Heads of state, 35 of them, who have confirmed they will attend. And the government will attend 54 of all of them. COVID is no longer a problem, but don't forget to have your COVID test before you go into Rwanda. Thank you very much. God bless all of you. God bless Africa. This station, therefore, is for Africa. Analyst Miriam has something else to say.
No, just join me at 3 p.m. with more news, the latest from the continent. That's all.
This station is for Africa, with Africa, by Africa. Ciao.